We now have a guest speaker slot, and we often invite people from beyond our club to come and speak to us as guest speakers. Well, when I was thinking about this agenda, I was thinking, who should we have as a guest speaker? And it occurred to me that within our club, we have Toastmasters' second vice president. So there's going to be a time, sometime in the next few years, when this person is going to become our international president. And I thought, wouldn't it be nice to hear from her? Now, as it turns out, although Morag and I arrived at this club from different routes, we've known each other for quite a long time. I first met her right at the beginning of my district leadership journey, but she was already famous because she had led her district to #1 performing district in the world, something that I'm not sure, certainly hasn't happened in Europe since, if I'm right, and I'm not sure how often it might have happened before. Since then, she has connected with people all over the world, and it's been a real pleasure to see her leading with love. So it is an absolute pleasure to introduce our own Morag, who is also Toastmasters' second vice president. She is speaking from the visionary communication path and is talking about her leadership style. That's the project that she's working on. So, ladies and gentlemen, with her speech entitled Leading with Love, please give a round of applause to Morag.
Geoffrey oscillated between looking at the papers on his desk and gazing out of the window. This was interrupted occasionally when the office door opened, just in case she might enter the room. And if she did enter the room, maybe she was looking for him. Valentine's Day that year dawned snowy with sunshine. The air was filled with chatter about cards and gifts given and received. He slipped quietly into his office before anyone asked him anything. He shook the snow from his shoes, and as he stepped across the room, it happened. The door creaked open, and there she was, Jenny, with a mug of hot chocolate, just for him. As she set the mug on his desk, she turned. Their eyes locked. Silently, he drew her into his arms, and their lips met. Fellow Toastmasters and dear guests, maybe when you heard the title of my speech today, you thought that we were going to be talking about some kind of 1950s office life. Love in the workplace could be a good topic for another day. In 2012, the keynote speaker at the Toastmasters International Convention in Orlando, Florida, was Joel Manby. He'd been a leader in many businesses at the level where he'd been featured in an episode of Undercover Boss. And this was the book that he was launching, Love Works, with his 7 principles for effective leaders. He defined love as an act, something we do rather than something we feel. Addressing the issue of what happens when we do this, acting rather than feeling, really struck a chord with me. And inspired by his work and thoughts, I wanted to share with you today, not 7, but just 4 principles that I think are the basics for any leader, whatever the organization, whatever the stage in leadership you're at. And I believe when you look at the style of any leader, you will see these principles somewhere within that style. The first of these principles is listening. If we lead with love, I believe we're listening. Listening for me is about setting aside your ego, demonstrating respect for the other person or people, cherishing what your colleagues and your teammates have to contribute. Often when we listen, it makes us much more creative. Your idea sparks my idea sparks someone else's, and so it goes. But also when we listen, it can really help us address the issue of conflict. Of course, when we listen, we might start to hear things that we would rather not hear. But that opens the door. It opens the door to improvement if we're humble enough to be really open to listen. Often when I hear things that I don't agree with, I have this moment of, you must be crazy. Thankfully, I don't usually say that, but I do have a trusted confidant in my life, someone that I came across early in my leadership journey who sees the world in a very different way to me. And so when those moments happen for me, I'll call him up and I'll say, Benjamin, if you came across this, what would you think? He brings me that other perspective. And usually I have to agree. Yep, it's just a point of view I hadn't thought of, but I'm hearing it now. We also need, as leaders, to listen to understand rather than listening just to respond. Because when we just respond, we don't demonstrate the full value that we might feel for other people. And we may just miss something on the way through. My second principle for you today is oversight. I think leaders need to have oversight, especially if we think about leading with love. It is important not to just slip into being concerned about yourself and your team and forget about why you're together, because usually a team only exists if there's a task to be done. If we don't deliver on our task, then it can often be a very unhappy outcome. Imagine if our club leaders, if Maggie and Tanisha just spent all their time calling each other and they were quite happy, chatting and enjoying life. They were a very cozy team with the rest of our officer team. But it won't get us meetings where we can practice our speaking and leadership skills. It won't bring us to that place of excellence, of improvement, that quest that we're all on for personal growth in one form or another. So I believe as a leader, we have to keep an eye on what we're supposed to be doing. Check out those metrics. Don't obsess, but check and know, understand your progress. The third principle I think leaders have are values. Gallup, the famous pollsters, say that 80% of companies have expressed some sort of core values. And for those of us who are Toastmasters on the call, I'm sure if I asked you, you could tell me the 4 core values of Toastmasters: integrity, respect, service, and excellence. Having core values means practically nothing unless you put in place the systems and the processes to support them. How do you send a message to your team about the behaviours and attitudes that you expect, as well as what you expect them to do? As well as the 4 core values that the organisation has in Toastmasters, each one of us will also have other values that matter to us personally. And actually, we might place them as more important than all of the core values of Toastmasters. Usually when I lead a team, I ask that team to take part in a core values exercise right at the beginning, where we discover our shared values and our most strongly held personal values. When I was the incoming district director of my home district then, District 59, I did this exercise with my team. And we found something really interesting. One of the 7 had as his highest personal value accomplishment. Life was nothing for him unless he was achieving and delivering on metrics. At the other end, we had another member of the team whose most strongly held value was harmony. We have to be happy being together, and we have to be in agreement. As a leader, we would have been in for some huge tensions if I had not known that. So that helps us to talk about what matters, to understand and to manage and lead your team in a way that avoids conflict if possible, or helps you work right through it. The final of the 4 values I'll share with you today, the 4 principles, is empathy. Empathy is that capacity to understand or feel what another person is experiencing from within their frame of reference. So it is the capacity to put yourself in another person's position. And right now, with all the stress in the world that we're all experiencing in one way or another, having empathy is significant for all of us. When we have empathy, I believe it will bring out the kindness in us. Sometimes people think kindness is a bit weak. It's about being nice all the time. I don't believe it is at all. I believe kindness is about having empathy and being encouraging people to get on the right track, encouraging people to bring out the best in themselves, encouraging people to contribute the best way they can to the team. And especially thinking about the situation they're in. What you might encourage one person to do is not what you would encourage another, depending on their situation. Having empathy is also not about being patient with poor performance, but being patient about how you handle poor performance. Praising in public, admonishing in private, noticing even the smallest modicum of progress. It's also not about avoiding giving feedback just because times are tough, but it is about giving honest feedback in a way that the other person can handle. A friend of mine talks, I think very helpfully, about building a bridge of trust that can withstand the weight of truth. I think that would be an amazing achievement for any team or any relationship. Because when we can truly be honest with each other, we can be stronger together. And as a leader, taking that time to build trust in your team that will allow you to be really open with each other and really honest with each other will allow you to lead with love. And this Irish proverb says that when mistrust comes in, love goes out. So for me, love and trust go hand in hand. And if I could choose to be any kind of a leader, I'd choose to be a leader who leads with love, so that trust and love go hand in hand for the good of us all. Madam Toastmaster.
Fabulous. Thank you very much, Morag. Really great speech. Love to hear you talking about leading with love. I don't know about you, ladies and gentlemen, but I was watching this supreme slideology with Zoom, and I'm thinking that the next time we ask Morag to speak, we can get her to teach us how to do all that cool stuff.